All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining this episode today. Simon, we have you on the phone. Like, this is so exciting because we actually connected, I believe it was through Facebook and Messenger. And I was just like scrolling through one day as my aimless scrolling and like saw a post about you up on stage. And you were actually talking about your son and just how like proud you are of one of your son's agency where he had social media influence agency, and you were talking about, and you could just feel the passion and just that like representation of what we're trying to do here for the Dadhood. So welcome to the show, my friend.
No, thank you very much for having me. I was having a proud moment. The pride was oozing out of me, and it wasn't just him. It was all four of them. I was very proud of all of them. They're all turning out to be nice young men.
Oh, I love that. So, I mean, before we even jump in and start talking about these sons of yours, how about you just give the audience an overview? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm recently unemployed. Having had a business for 30 years, I'm now, for the first time, without a job for 30 years, which sounds a lot worse than it really is because I'm working on a very exciting project. I'm one of these people that doesn't like, ships were not built to sit in safe harbours. They were built to sail the seas, and I'm about to embark on a very exciting project, which is completely scary, which is completely irrational, probably to most people, but to me, it's just a wonderful challenge. For the last 30 years, I've been running a media business in the travel space. So we've had our ups and downs from 2001 to 2020. So I steered that ship through incredibly rough waters, and I left it in the harbour in a much better position than I started it in. And I'm very, very proud to have done that as well and affected the lives of lots and lots of people. And that also afforded me this opportunity to be a great dad, because probably in the early days I wasn't. I was a very absent dad. I travelled a lot. People call me a Disneyland dad. They had the best holidays, but that was about it. So it's nice now to spend a lot more time with them, and I'm going to spend a bit more time in my son's office annoying him. um, and two of them work there, so it's quite good. And the third one doesn't work very far away, so I get to spend a lot more time with them than I did as an early dad.
So when you talk about that, how was that impactful on you? Like how, because obviously you can tell that not being able to be there necessarily at the younger ages, it does have an impact on us as dads, but we also have to do what we need to do, right? We're running organizations, building things out. So when you reflect back on those times, is it is it hard to see the choices you made, or are you still proud of the choices you made during those times?
It's interesting. A lot of the things we do and say, I'm doing this for you, and I'm doing this for the kids, I'm doing this to be it's not really true. We do a lot of things we do for us, for our own ego, for our own welfare and our well-being. And obviously we say family is the reason we're doing it, but we also want to do well. And I think kids watch what you do. I'll never forget in 2008 when it was really tough, I started embarking upon these really difficult challenges. I'm a 300-pound human, and I said I'm going to run a marathon, because if I can do that, then we can do anything. And I went off and I did a marathon. And when I came out for the marathon, I said I'm going to do a triathlon next. And I started doing all these tasks. The problem was I ended up doing a half Ironman. And in order to do a half Ironman, you have to train 2 to 3 hours every single day to be able to get yourself in that position. And my wife would say, you're disappearing for 2 hours on your bike on a Saturday. I'm looking after the kids. I said, look, I promise you, they will see the effort that I'm putting in, the hours, the commitment I'm taking. And, I climbed Kilimanjaro, and my kids said to me, I want to do that one day, Dad. I want to do a marathon one day, Dad. I want to do. So I know that they observe what you do more than what you say, and how you behave and how you treat each other is what they're watching for. And I think, that's what I think I've done a good job at.
Oh, that's so good. I love that because it's so true. They're just constantly watching us, right? They're little sponges, especially as they're growing up, and they're wanting to be a lot of times. I think, like I have two boys as well, and we'll talk about your boys here. But it seems like boys are just watching us as dads, right? And they're like, I want to be like that guy, or maybe they're not, depending on what kind of dad you are.
If you, my son is a big gambler. He's a big eater, and he likes to eat at the best restaurants and and gamble hard. And thankfully, he's a good gambler at the minute. So as long as that continues, long may that continue. And it's some of those traits I taught him. Some of the things I'd do is he'd sit on my lap and I'd put the racing on and he'd watch me and I said, right, you're the jockey, ride faster. That's our horse there in the yellow. So, that was his early learnings. He was crap at maths, but he could work out what 5 chips on the roulette wheel paid out in 17 seconds. Yeah. But you asked him to do a mathematical equation, couldn't do it for love nor money.
Isn't that's so funny? So tell me, like, how many? So you have 4 boys, correct?
Yeah.
And
I had to think they were 15, 19, 21, and 23.
okay, so yeah, not terribly far apart, like in retrospect. So you have the 15. Is the 15-year-old still at home then?
They're all still at home at the minute.
They're all still okay. Very. And how's that treating you, Simon?
Honestly, I opened some food today and it's gone. Literally, you got to package food, put a sticker on it if you want to keep it. Otherwise, it's you know. And you go to bed with a full fridge and you wake up and go, "Where's all that food that we made last night?" It's yeah.
That's so fun. So now that you are in a different position, I know you said you're about to take on another adventure, and you're about to grab your ship and leave port on this one. And it sounds like it's maybe high risk, or you're as any adventure is, right? We don't know what the seas to bring, but with that, you were also saying that you are in a position now where you really are enjoying this time with your kids. So, um, tell me about that. Like, what now, having a little bit of freedom in between, that last career you have in this new adventure? Like, what are some of those things that you do in the time that you spend with your boys?
Well, I mean, I do think that in my new adventure, they're going to get involved and they're going to be part of it, and um, they're going to help me and inspire me. And I think the 15-year-old to come and work there and do some things as well. So I think we're going to be closer, as within the business, and just spending more time together, and just little things like walking the dog now and going to grabbing a coffee together. And I'll pop into his office tomorrow, and I said I'll come in and sit down with his team and train and motivate them. And it's just it's not planned. It's all very fluid. And I spent my whole weekend doing nothing. Literally doing nothing. I don't remember the last time I spent a weekend doing nothing and watching crappy TV. Probably 2020 was the last time I did that. Um, all these things are nice, and I'm helping my other son. Actually, all 4 sons will have some impact on this from this new business, and it's just going to be an exciting time where we can all grow and develop and be part of the success of it. Every business, I think it's 90% of businesses fail in the first year. So as long as we get through that first year, we'll be fine. How my other business didn't fail, I don't know. It should have failed probably 15 times in 20 years, but in 30 years. But somehow we kept it going.
Hmm. Oh, that's lovely. With this, because this is really going to resonate with some of the audience. Having a family owned business and bringing in your children, with you along in this journey, like, do you feel like there's moments where that can get complicated? Or do you think it just bonds you more?
No, we'll have lots of arguments. Listen, I have the
Mm.
Gordon Ramsay approach, which is, there's a lot of heat in the kitchen, and we're all going to want perfection in our own little ways, and but it's just a kitchen. Once we get back out of the kitchen, it's hopefully we can carry on. But no, it's always challenging being involved in your kids' business. The same way as some of my kids worked for me for many years, and that's always hard being a dad employer. When you when
Mm.
you want to stop him being, you know, bullied is the right word, but you watch him being ab- abused by others because he's the boss's son, and you got to be pretty thick-skinned to be able to put up with that. Now I go in to help him, and I'm the boss's dad, and that's even more surreal. But he never wanted to be working daddy's business. He wanted to have his own business, and I'm just glad that I can help him and use some of my experience and my input to help him achieve what he wants to achieve in a speedier fashion. So with the others, it's just lovely to watch them grow and develop. One wants to be a professional footballer, and he also works with my other son. So, you know, helping him now, pursue his passion and pushing him, encouraging him, and you know, dealing with his ups and his down days, and sharing all this motivational stuff that I know and I learned. And there's so many skills that I've learned over the last 15, 20 years that are useful for them. How to regulate your emotions, how to get yourself in a place when everybody around you seems to be letting you down, and how to keep coming back up.
Mm.
Every time you get knocked down, it's not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you can get back up from it. And it's hard. Professional sport is hard anyway. And the other one, he was 13 years old and he got chronic fatigue. He didn't go to school for 2 years, maybe 3 years. He still passed all his exams. He still achieved so much, and it's so nice to see him now at 21 and just enjoying what he's done, enjoying what he does. Last week he flew off to LA to shoot with Zach King, and he's doing some really cool things. He was shooting with Tyson Fury last week, so it's like I'm in some way I'm watching, I'm living my life through them and just the amazing things that they're doing.
Mm. I love that. I love sitting there being able to watch, I mean, a lot of the efforts and the work that you've put in, right? And just then now standing back as the observer rather than the teacher. But still sounds like, Simon, you have a lot of teaching you do with them. You're talking about like a lot of this motivation, helping them realize that, the world is tough at times and you are going to get knocked down and you got to just keep getting back up, as you said. How do you do that in a way that you feel really is engaging with them and not like speaking at them? Because I feel like sometimes I'm trying to teach my boys a lesson, but I'm like, man, I feel like I'm just speaking at them. Are they really grasping it?
They are, but sometimes it's a YouTube clip or an Instagram reel or a story where I'll share it and just write a little message and say, I think this is quite useful for you today, or watch this and see what you think. So it's not always my voice. It's somebody else saying, you know, we'll talk about stuff, and then I'll see a message and I'll go, right, look, it's not just me saying this to you. It's this is what's going on in the world as well. So it's using what's around you as well to make sure that you get your message across, because people, they'll think you just say it because you're my dad, and if you can find other examples of the same message, then it just reinforces it as well. And no, it's exciting. Obviously you want to do the best by them and you want them to all succeed, but they also need to understand that it doesn't always. We don't always win. There's lots of lost battles in every war, and sometimes you've got to feel the pain of losing a battle.
So when you're seeing that pain and they are losing the battle in the moment, is it very difficult for you not to step in and try to protect?
Try and save, yeah. No, because I think they need to go through
No.
some of that pain. The amount of times my children left home, allegedly left home, they'd walk out the door. Even the youngest did it last weekend. Oh, I'd go after him. I said, no, he'll be back in 10 minutes. He'll need the toilet. And one of them left. He said, I'm leaving the house. And ran out. And he got to the end of the road, realised he needed to go to the toilet. And within 10 minutes, he was back. He said, I need to go to the toilet. So sometimes you've got to have faith as well that there are lots of bad homes and bad families, and I've done my best to be a good one. And yeah, there'll be times where we don't agree on stuff, and you've got to let them go through their pain. They've got to feel their own reality, and so maybe sometimes talk to some of their friends and go, it's not as bad as you think it is. And
Hmm.
your dad, your mum, they're not bad people. They're good people, and they've only got your best intentions at heart.
Hmm. That is so good. I laugh because my 8-year-old even has had a couple times. He's very headstrong, and he at 8, Simon, he's had a couple times where I'm out of here at 8. Okay, I'm like, all right, buddy, and I'm like, the door is always unlocked both ways. You can come back. You can come back in, and I'll find him out hiding in the bushes for a little while, and then he'll come back in to get a snack or something. It's all good, and I love that so much because what those moments are also giving them permission that they are their own individual. Like you have permission to leave, go out, fine, talk, obviously at 8, I'm not going to let them go too far, but as at 15 or whatever, or 13, 15, if they feel like that and going out and speaking to their friends and realizing, oh, to your point, my mom and dad aren't that bad. They're great. They're great parents and they're doing a good job. So I love that.
My house at the weekend, when the football's on or the boxing match is on, it's just full of, everyone's friends, and they're all sort of congregating here, and I love it too. I love it hanging around with them and listening to their stories, and um, you know, they're all quite cool kids, and they're all grown up and mature, and the eldest moved out when he was 18, um, and then he bought his flat, his flat, and he sold his flat, and he's bought a house, and he moved back in for a month, and that was about 6 months ago. He goes, I'm not moving out till the house is fully designed. I'm having interior designers. I'm doing everything. And I'm like, how long is this going to take? And yesterday, and this is what all these boxes behind me are. He's got um, Soho House cutlery sets and crockery sets, and these big TVs, and I'm like, can you not get them delivered to your house? He goes, yeah, I'll take them there eventually. So yeah, our house is like some sort of Amazon storage depot at the minute.
But there's something about that speaks volumes about what you have created, Simon.
Bloody
That they
monster.
feel like
I've
they
created.
but they feel like they have a space, like they're more at home even though they have their own flat. They're more at home in your presence, in your environment, which speaks a lot.
I think he doesn't want to encompass his food bills before too long. But no, it's lovely having them all here, and it's also horrible having them all here because it's like, some days it's like a boxing gym. They're all beating 6 bells of stuff out of each other, and I never forget. I mean, when I was a kid, me and my brother used to fight like cat and dog. I never forget my parents coming home from one night, and my brother's got a golf ball lump on his head where I chucked a snooker ball at him, and it was just, they couldn't understand it, and I said, it's just boys, that's what boys do, and sometimes they're fighting. My wife's like, "Wow, this is ridiculous." Just let them get on with it. They'll be best friends tomorrow, and that's the way it is. One minute they're fighting with each other, they hate each other. The next minute they're busy mates, and the eldest is very generous. If he has a good win, he gives them all a bit of money, and you know lets them all go shopping and stuff. And he gets all these brand stuff through the office, and he brings all the branded gear home for them. So they're all good to each other, and I think they're good pals.
Mhm. Was there anything specific you did to help foster that, or is it just naturally they just all naturally have developed that bond?
I think it's come naturally. Um, you know,
Mm.
I don't think anything should be forced. Um, I think they've just they've all got similar interests, and it's funny because the top and the bottom two are like me. They're big and bulky, and the two in the middle are skinny and like six packs. So it's like they just don't deserve to be part of our family. It's like those two are mine, and the other two are my wife's. So it's like, okay, we'll. It doesn't make sense. You can't believe we all came out the same pot.
So with you, because I think a lot of the things too that I'm really curious about is when we're raising our kids, like, did you try to keep um, like some of those gender norms you hear in society, like, the mom's always cooking, blah, 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 like these kind of things. How was that in your household? Did you feel like it was more like split responsibilities, or you feel like because you were so busy, mom had to do a lot more, or like how did that kind of work out?
Definitely in the early days, she ran the house. She ran that business, and I ran the other business. Um, and I think as they've got older, I started taking them away on trips with me. So when they're like 13 or 14, if I was going on a trip somewhere, I'd say, well, when they had a holiday, come with me and see what it's like, because I really
Mm.
wanted them to understand that it wasn't just dad disappearing; it was dad was working. And I took the
Mm.
eldest and I went to Brazil, and I was opening an office in Brazil. And normally when I used to travel, I used to stay in these very average hotels, and nondescript. This time they put me up in this hotel, and you get down to breakfast. Mr. Leslie, what would you like for breakfast? And the first day, so the next day, would you like? And he goes, I like this place. They know what I want to eat and drink and everything, and they keep calling me by my name. And I'm wandering around the hotel, and they're looking after me. And I'm like, no, 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 this is not what it's normally like. And then one of my colleagues took him out for ice cream and stuff. He goes, cool, this is so much fun. I'd like to come on a trip with you again. I said, yeah, I haven't done this right. I said, anyway, I've got a treat for you. At the end of we were in Sao Paulo. At the end of the trip, I said, come on, we're going to Rio. And he goes, what? I said, we're going to Rio. We're going to watch a football game. We're going to go and play football on the beach. And so that was the treat. But he'd enjoyed the trip so much. It was like the treat was all right, but it was like, this whole thing is fun. This is what you do. No wonder I love what you do. So I think there's elements of what he does in his business. He's replicated a lot of the things that I did. Um, like in
Mm.
the first year, he took his whole team away at Christmas to the Maldives. He flew them to the south of France, and they worked out of a villa for a week. So he saw a lot of the things that I did that created nice cultural behaviours, and he introduced those into his business early on. So I do think that's important, that some of the things that I thought I was just doing to make him understand what I did actually paid off in the long run, in terms of him wanting to replicate a lot of those things as well.
Mm. Oh, that's so great. I love that. I love that he had so much joy in the trip. You're like, okay, he's going to find out exactly what I do. And this whole time, he's having the time of his life. What would be, Simon? Obviously, you've had an amazing career up to this point. While running a large organization like that, is there any takeaways from the business world that you felt really resonated as far as like helping guide your sons also?
Yeah, I had a lot of coaches and a lot of mentors. psychology. Before mental health was a cool thing, not a cool thing, a thing. I was dealing with this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was bringing in CBT counsellors, and I was spending a lot of time doing work with them as well while I was at it. And I think that definitely paid off in terms of listening, in terms of patience, in terms of not reacting, and just responding rather than reacting. And I think a lot of those skills definitely helped me be a calmer parent. Um, and also, I think I met lots of people all over the world, and saw different ways that they were managing their kids and how they were growing up. And I think that's interesting. Is I don't know if this is the same for you, but didn't want to bring my kids up the same way as my mum and dad brought me up. My mum was, if I wanted something done, I went to my mum, and my dad was angry, and he was a grumpy dad, um, and I didn't want to be that disciplinarian dad. I didn't want to be that. I was quite happy to be a bit of a hippie dad. I think. I was like, I hardly ever went to some of the school. I hated school, right? So every time I went to school, it made my fucking skin crawl. Just going like we actually did a Zoom parents' evening the other week, and even that made me feel a bit queasy. But because I think the first time I went in, and the teacher said, Benji's been in a lot of fights, and my question was, does he win them? And she goes, that's not.
I resonate so much with that, Simon, because schooling for me it just wasn't my jam, even though I ended up going and getting a master's degree, and I don't even know why the heck I did that. I guess I just need to blow through some money for higher education. But I think even to your point, like I go to parent teacher conferences now, and they're like, Liam's a little behind on reading, and I'm like, he's 8. Like, does it really matter? Like, is he a good kid? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, is he respectful in class? Is he kind to other kids? Like, cool. Then he's winning. So,
I mean, I used
yeah.
to get the homework back, and I didn't even get an English degree. I've written 4 books, right? So it's not like somehow I've managed to work all this stuff out. But I'd get the homework and I'd look at it. There were like typos in there in the teacher's marks, and I'm like, she can't even spell. I said, I can't take this seriously. I can't take her mark seriously. And they get all these sort of temporary teachers, and the kids know how to play the game. And I'd hate to be a teacher today, and I'd hate to manage not just the teachers but the parents, because the parents are worse than the kids because they think their Johnny is an absolute angel, whereas I know what little shits mine are, and I'm sure the poor teachers that had to put up with them, probably with the exception of Scott, they were all nightmares for the teachers. Or Zach never went to school, so he wasn't so bad, but. George the youngest and Benji the oldest, they made their teachers earn their money. They really did.
That's so funny. What would be, because now like talk, I love this transition about that because man, it resonates with so many. I know of the listeners as well. Like some of these dads that are listening, and I'm all for you dads if you're all about like the higher education and grades, whatever. That's your jam. But falling in, like if your kids would come home and they had like a bad grade and stuff, how would you react to that or like respond to that situation?
Um, I don't think they ever shared it with me. They keep it away from me. um, but I wouldn't have cared. Like I say, it's important. Are they nice? Are they kind? Have they got good friends? Are their friends nice? I certainly recognise now with the youngest, the kids are horrible. A lot of the kids are just not very nice. It's weird. I think he said to me, "Do you know, Dad? You and Mum are the only married couple in my school, in my class yet. All my friends have come from broken homes. It's not cool to have parents who are married." And I went, I mean, that's just a so surreal comment. Whereas when I was at school, everybody's was married, if there was a kid whose parents were separated, it was like they were odd, they were weird. Whereas today, it's a
Mm.
complete role reversal. Um, but I just think that a lot of the kids are broken. There's so much mental health and trouble with them. They can't seem to regulate their emotions, and I think it's bad for society. And I don't think us teaching kids the same way as we did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, maybe 50 years ago is good for the future generations, because we're not in the industrial revolution anymore, and these things aren't so important. And the things that are important are not getting taught. Like my son can work a 6 horse accumulator, but he can't. He probably can't use Excel. It's just it doesn't make any sense to me. The stuff they're getting taught, they should be getting taught much more about social media. They should be getting taught much more about kindness and reciprocity and giving and generosity and all the things that will make them stronger men and women is what I would love to see more of. And I think Andre Agassi has done something like that in Vegas, but we definitely need more schools. We need a revolution in schooling, I think.
I couldn't agree more. I talk about that all the time. I say, like, look, you're still trying to educate children the same way with little minor tweaks that you've been doing year after year after year. You're more worried about a test score than you are about like how they're actually functioning in society. Critical communication skills, these kind of things,
You're seeing more suicide,
and
at a young age, more youth suicide than I don't ever remember that happening at school. If it happened, even in a school year across, 50 schools in your area, you'd hear about it. Now it's a norm, and I think that's just it's not a recipe for good for for a good state of the union.
mm, yeah. I, Listen, dads, when you're rewind that part, listen to it, turn it up, because I think it is part of our responsibility as parents just to try to enforce some of those things, the values that we find are important, and to make sure that our kids understand those lessons, because we can't rely on just the education system, or obviously we can't rely on just social media to raise our children, which a lot of people are just allowing to happen. So getting more involved, and a lot of these things Simon is saying, like, that's so important. What is Simon? What's been one of the biggest struggles as a dad? What has been one of your hardest challenges? You'd say.
I think seeing them upset, seeing them
Mm.
when things are not going right, when they break up with their girlfriend, when they're miserable because the friends have not invited them to a party, but things where you can't really help them. You can listen and be a shoulder to cry on, but you know they've just got to process it and go through it, and you just got to sit there and watch them go through that pain. And I think that's probably the hardest thing being a dad, not having the answers. It's easy when you can buy them something or you can do something which you can help them and make life easier, but it's when it's those moments when you can't do anything. It's out of your control, and you're just gonna sit back and be there, be available, but not intrude too much, because you know you saying nothing sometimes is better than saying something.
Mm. No, for sure. That's a good lesson. That's a lesson I'm going to take away from this episode as well. That sometimes just saying nothing is better than trying to teach a lesson, or chiming in with the situations.
You can't fix
On the
everything.
flip side of that, Simon,
You can't.
well, go ahead.
You can't fix everything. That's the biggest
Mm.
takeaway from this. To every dad, the first year of birth of a child, no one tells you this, but it's the most horrible year of your life. You're both miserable.
Mm.
You're fighting because neither of you have slept properly. You're waking up. You don't know what to do. We dropped the first kid, got dropped on his head. He was out cold. Um, all these experiences, doors falling on their heads, and you're wrapping them in cotton wool. By the fourth child, it's like, whatever, leave him in the kitchen all day and pick him up later. It really is, the way you behave as a parent, as a first parent, versus the way you behave as a multiple child parent, and um, is so different. But you know, it's those moments where you can't fix it, you can't do anything other than just be there, be present, and do the best you possibly can, because um, you're going to go through all these emotions. So you get that first year, which is horrible. You see the they're terrible twos when they're doing all the doing all the things, and but now they're growing up so quick. You talk about your 8-year-old. I've seen 5 and 6-year-olds now just absolutely ordering their parents around, telling them what they can and can't do. Then you get the phase where they hate school, they love school, they're academic, they're not academic. You've got all these different things that you've got to manage and process. Then they get their first car, and you bought him a car, you didn't buy me a car, and he okay, I might be kinder to this one. I'm helping this one a bit more than I'm helping this one this week, and it's that balance as well, of which is, well, you helped him with his flat. Can you help this one with this? Can you? So you've got to make sure that you're dosing it out in equal measures all the way along, and it's definitely it's there's no rule book here. There's no playbook most of the time, and you're making it up as you go along. And people will give you bits of advice, but they don't always give you great advice. I've had colleagues whose kids had childhood cancer, and having to deal with that, how to process that, having to work with them and help them and support them through that. Unfortunately, we've had colleagues who've lost their children, and again, all these emotions. Whilst I haven't had them directly happen to me, I've been involved in that a lot. So I've definitely learned a lot about the challenges. When one of the kids' friends commits suicide, you just don't understand the ripple effect that has in the community, in the school, not just in their school, but right through that school year, because they're all friendly with so many kids across the county. So just little things like that. Weird things, like they've got to go in for an operation and they've got something wrong with their nose, with their legs, whatever it is. You're like, I know it's just a routine operation, but who knows? And thankfully, we've got private medical insurance, but those buggers have been battered over the last decade in terms of money that's been spent on everything, every part of the body that's been beaten or battered or mentally charged.
Hmm. So with that, and having a lot of these experiences, having cohorts or other people with their own issues, like you were saying, we all have our things that are going on right within our houses. What would be the one piece of advice, maybe to a new father? Because I was with you the first years of my childhood with my boys. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's so lovely," and I was like, "No, this wasn't lovely. This was horrible." And I felt like I was becoming depressed, and like it was a bad situation.
Yeah.
Um, and you kind of had mentioned balancing it out, but what would be your advice to any dads out there?
It's a long time. Forever is a long time, and there's no, mine are only in their early 20s, and they're still figuring their stuff out. And I imagine the next 10 years are going to be just as challenging. And I just think that whatever phase you're going through, it's just a phase. It's like a game of football. You're in that phase, and you've got to play it as well as you can play it. And then there's another phase coming straight after it. And um, you know, I never would say I wish I'd only had two, or probably three would have been max. But every single one of them has given me a different sense of joy and pride, and um, and I have different fun and emotions with each of them, and I would say have as many as you possibly can, and watch be as present as you can, because you know the moments I missed, I've been very lucky. I've made up for, and I've paid a lot of catch up over the last 5, 6 years. I said, there was no more. I'm not going to miss any more games. I'm not going to miss any more. I started coming back from trips early and just saying, I don't care. I want to see him play, or I want to be at that party, or I'm going to go to that event with them. And I think that's important. I think you forget. We always think that um, everything is more important, and it really shouldn't be. Everything should be, your important should be your health and the people that you love, and people you spend the most amount of time with. And I'm going to caveat that a little bit, because there was a time where I felt really bad, and I said, right, I'm going to take this week off. I'm going to take the kids to school. And what happened was the kids said, we don't want you to take us to school. We want mummy to take us to school. And I think that's important. Sometimes they want routine, and they don't want to change because you think you deserve to spend some of that time with them. That's not what you're there for. You're there to do differently. You're there to keep the ball around the guards, or to play catch until your arm goes blue, or hit the ball at them 15 times until they're happy that they've scored the wonder goal. Maybe it is mum who takes the kids to school, and that's what they're comfortable with. Kids don't need 2-week holidays in Disney. They just want to maybe sit in front of the telly with you and watch a Disney movie. It's not what you think or what you want is what's important. It's what they want, and sometimes we forget to ask that question.
Ooh, there was so much power behind that, Simon. Because we always, I mean, it's human nature. We come to situations from our perspective, right? And raising children isn't just from our perspective. There's other human lives that are involved, and they have their own objectives and their own desires and needs. And how do we come and meet them in that space to where we can both create space for each other? I love that.
I do think, though, and one of the reasons why my kids are as well grounded as they are is because they travel so much. And I do think travel brings out the best in all of us. But they've
Mm.
seen so many cultures. When we'd go to Brazil, I'd still say, look, let's go see a favela. Let's go see what the other half is. When we went to South Africa, I took them and said, look, let's go to Soweto and see what that looks like. So your life is not the same as that kid over there's life. When you feel hard done by because you haven't got the latest iPhone, or you haven't got the latest trainers, it hasn't even got feet. So there needs to be some context and perspective brought into the trips, and that was we weren't that family that just stayed in the 5-star hotel and never left. I really wanted them to see some context of kids begging on the street, kids doing whatever they needed to do to survive, and I think that's really important. And I think um, we were in San Francisco, and by accident we ended up walking down Skid Row, and for me that was the most.
Mm.
I think I must have grabbed their hands so tight, but they still talk about the fact that they saw these people, with spears and with crack pipes, and all this sort of thing that they were exposed to, and it just reminds them how lucky they are. So sometimes you have to show perspective, and show the other side of the coin.
Oh, absolutely. What I have here, so I created this. It's called the Dad Deck, and their conversation in sparked in like cards where they just everyone has a different question on the back, and I play with my kids at times, but I love it for the podcast here because it just is a super random question that will come up. So you tell me when to stop, Simon.
Stop.
Okay, we're gonna go. We're gonna just take this one here. Here's a good one. So the question is, what lesson from your parents have you implemented with your kids? So is there anything that your parents taught you or you experienced with them that you thought, you know what, I'm going to do that with my children?
I try to do the complete opposite of what my parents taught me. Um, Well, it's an interesting question, that, because when I started writing my new book, which is called How to Live Your Second Life First, and one of the questions I asked my dad was what qualities I thought he gave me. And he said, well, the fact that you're asking me that worries me. And I said, well, I'm struggling, to be honest, Dad. And then he gave me a really good answer. He said, look, I gave you resilience. I showed you what hard work looked like. I showed you, and identified qualities in me that he felt that he'd given me. Now, I didn't necessarily think they came from him, but it was sort of an interesting observation as well. But I think it's a really interesting exercise when you look at your parents and say, well, what are the best bits I've inherited from them, and what are the worst bits? And I think they were always sociable. I think they were always generous. They always had time for me, for my friends, and they made everybody feel welcome at our house. We were lucky they had a swimming pool, so we were always quite popular with people coming around to want to have a swim. Um, but there were, there were. I think they were really welcoming to everybody, and made people feel very welcome. And I think that's something that we definitely, that's something we definitely replicate at ours. People come round and there's always plenty of food and drink and snacks for everybody, and nobody ever leave here. The kids always say that, my wife feeds them really well. They always say that her food is better than their own mum's. So I think that's probably the hospitality point was definitely inherited from our parents.
No, that's great. I hope I can incorporate those same things. I try to always figure out how do I make my house the spot that the kids want to hang out at, but I also realize it's the shiny and new when they want to go over to their friends all the time. It's because there's something different, right? Um, but with this, Simon, one last thing, because I've loved this episode. I've personally learned so much, and I know the listeners are going to learn and take away so much from this. But what would be the one message that you, at the end of your life, you would want your kids, if they were to answer that same question, what would you want their takeaway from you as a dad to be that they implement into their lives with their families?
It triggered a story. I'll tell you the story in a second, but I would want them to talk about generosity, kindness,
Mm.
appreciation, um, always sharing stories. He always had a story for everything. And there was a guy that was he was born and he was called Amazing. His parents called him Amazing, and at school he'd get ridiculed for, oh, how amazing, and get bullied for it. And then when he went to work, they tease him as well. His colleagues go, oh, that's amazing work. And you know he got married, he had kids, and even at the wedding speeches, it was always, oh, this is an amazing wedding, amazing. It was always sort of, it bothered him. He loved the fact that he had a fun name and he had a beautiful family and it was a big family and he was a pillar of the community and everyone loved him. He was a shoulder to cry on. And he gets to about 85, I think he was, and he was about to die. And he said to his wife, look, can you do me a favour? Whatever you do, don't put my name on my tombstone. I don't want people to ridicule me after I've gone. I've had an amazing life. I love you dearly, but I just would love to go to the next place and just not have people make fun of me anymore. So she, yeah, okay, that's what you want. That's what you want. And a couple of months later, he died, and his tombstone read this. And I think it's always important to remember that on your tombstone, it doesn't say, well, he had a house in Miami, he had a Lamborghini, he had 3 Rolexes, and it never says that. It tells you the day you were born, the day you died, right? So all these people who are so obsessed with material things, you ain't taking them with you. So make sure you use your money wisely. It said this. It said, here lies a doting husband, father to 4 wonderful children, 16 truly fabulous grandchildren. He was the pillar of society, always a shoulder to cry on. Everybody loved and adored him. 1943 to 2022. And then one day, these two ladies are walking through the cemetery, and they see this tombstone, and one turns to the other and goes, "Look at that! That's amazing." And I think sometimes you don't need to have your name on anything for people to understand how good your work was or how good you lived your life. And that's the sort of message I want people to feel like, that they can say you're amazing when you're no longer here.
Hmm. Yeah. And on that, my friends, nothing's going to top that one. Simon, I love that. That was a perfect way wrapping this up. If someone wants to follow your amazing journey, Simon, what's the best way for them to just connect with you and be part of your ecosystem?
Well, I used to share a lot on LinkedIn, but I don't share that much these days. But I will start sharing again soon once this new project's up and running, and either on LinkedIn or Instagram. I mean, I don't really use Facebook, so I think just the Instagram feeds into Facebook, so you'll get it there. And my website is luckyleslie.com, and I'll keep that updated so you can keep up with me. And when the new book comes out, or any of the books, please read them, because there's amazing stories in all of them. And I think life is definitely for living, and I'm never going to be one that gets and has any regrets at the end, because I am committed to living my best life every single year. And every time I get another one, I go, wow, I've got to top that.
Oh, man. Thank you so much. I mean, for taking the time today to jump on the show, but ultimately for just sharing your experiences and being open about your family. It means a lot. So I really appreciate that, Simon.
My pleasure.
Excellent. I will edit that out there. I'm excited to follow what your new adventure is going to be here. So I mean, just your the capability to captivate through stories. Um, yeah,
I
it's
love
such a
that.
gift,
And
and just
I use that amazing story a lot, because I think it really resonates in terms of people are so obsessed with things. I've got to have this,
mm,
I've got to have that. And, I think it's just, look, leave a legacy that people can really be proud of. And that's why I started writing the books, because I thought, well, in 50, 60 years' time, I've got grandchildren, they can read my stuff, because it's not going to go anywhere. Um, and I
mm,
met this kid last week. He's a kid, he's probably 30 odd. Everyone's a kid to me right now. And he said, I bought your book at the weekend to read it. And he goes, I just love everything that you talk about. And I just agree with everything that was in there. And I just couldn't put it down. And I just thought, oh, wow, this is somebody who's appreciated something that I've done. And, I've sold thousands and thousands and thousands of copies of that book that I just wrote because nobody was giving us any credit and any publicity. And now it actually is becoming a blueprint for many people starting their own businesses or struggling with challenges in business. And I, that wasn't my intention. And I probably should have said this on the program, but I'm always having conversations with my 16-year-old self. I always say to him, "How you doing? Am I doing you proud? Am I doing better than you thought we'd ever achieve?" And I think that keeps me on track. And I keep saying, I'm going to keep surprising you, son. keep me on point, but I'm going to keep pushing you
mm.
to new levels.
Oh no, I'm gonna add that into the show. So I'll figure out where we can loop that in.
Yeah,
Um, but no, I love that, and that's where I'm trying to focus on right now is building out this brand, not for just me, but building out this brand really for the community and giving the community the space and the permission and the openness just to say like, it's a good thing to be a dad. We have a big role in life. There's a lot of lessons, a lot of growth, and there's a lot of people that really care about being a good father and raising their children. So
There was a story last week which I didn't want to share on here, but my one of my colleagues who I've, you know, he's been with me a long time, and I changed his life. He turned up. He used to pawn his watch every 2 weeks to pay for, to get through the month. He ended up buying $1 million house in Costa Rica cash. Wasn't very happy with that. Then he came back to Miami, and then he moved back to the UK. I took him from the UK. He was a single guy. He ended up with a wife, and then they had a daughter. But the daughter now wants to be a son, and she hates them. And they're the two of the nicest people I've ever fucking met. And she thinks they're the most monstrosity of parents. So you can't regulate for that either. He has to. His daughter was called Natalie, and then she wants to be called Jordan, and it's like, fuck me, that's hard work.
mm, absolutely. And how do you process that? Because as the parents, you're going to think, was it something I did, or like why, like where.
Yeah, his wife came to the Christmas party we had, and I sat with her, and I must have sat with her for an hour because she was like blaming herself. I said, "It's not your fault. This is not your doing. That's just life." And I said, "It's what they're exposed to." And he goes, "But she thinks she's a 15-year-old boy. She's 19. Well, no shame in George, 15-year-old boy, but she watches like iCarly and girly, baby girly stuff." And he goes, he just said, "I can't regulate for it. I can't process it." Mad. So I always say, if you put your problems in a dish and everybody put their problems in, you'd have yours back in a heartbeat.
Yes, I love that. I love that. That's so good. Simon, I know it's later where you're at. Again, I really appreciate you jumping on and being willing to jump on. It's been a pleasure meeting you. I hope I can stay connected with you in some form. And yeah,
Please do.
it's just exciting.
It's 8 o'clock and I realise I haven't eaten anything. So I'm going to say
Yes.
good night. God bless.